brief video on how to prescribe for a patient that is in a clinic. Ideally, where you need to start, where you need to use is the actual clinic that you're in. So, for example, this is a clinic that has these patients currently booked. You're able to, in other videos, I've shown how you can see your own clinics, and how you can search for your clinics, and how you open your clinics. But in this scenario, I am just using this test patient. But this is roughly what you'd see when you are undertaking scheduled and routine regular clinics. So to prescribe for a patient here, you'll need to click the patient's name. So I'm just going to choose the second from the bottom. I've defaulted the medication EPR to land on the medication button, the patient's EPR to land on the medications button, but you may have it landing elsewhere, results requests or forms or other buttons, but I've chosen medications. There's a video to show you how to change that if you wish to change that. So as I'm in medications, what I'm going to do is I'm interested in doing an outpatient medication, so something that the patient needs to take home or collect from the GP. So as I'm the first person, the first clinician to work with this patient in Lorenzo, in this encounter, in this visit, I will be asked to update the patient's allergies. You can't proceed without pressing OK. If the patient has non-recorded, you can then change it to say that there's no known allergies if that's the case, or you cannot confirm them, which will just give this prompt again in the future to the next person that accesses Lorenzo, because you don't have the patient to hand or you've not asked them. But if you are going to record an allergy, you can click the record allergy button there, and there's a video around how to do that. But we're going to, for this scenario, saying that there's no known allergies. So the Lorenzo prescribing screen will open to create or amend an outpatient prescription. And very simply, I'm going to be very simple, and I'm going to choose aspirin, and I'm going to choose 75 milligrams that has been pre-populated for me. You'll be able to see there it says 75 milligrams every morning. Now, one of the mandatory fields here that is null that you'll need to select is the stationary type, and what that gives us is the option of doing an outpatient prescription or a GP supply. If we choose outpatient prescription, this is stating that the patient needs to obtain this from the trust and collect either from Boots or Pride. Pride or the trust. Nothing will print in either of those areas. It'll only print locally in the clinic or the printer that's attached to the Lorenzo device. So that paper, that documentation should be given to the patient so that they can take it to the appropriate pharmacy or sent to the appropriate pharmacy for the patient to collect at a later date. If your intention is to ask the GP to start this medication, you'd choose GP supply. That again will give another printout, but it will also transmit through the transmission areas, the policies into the GP arena that you've undertaken a request that the GP supply this prescription. So that's not to remove the need to do any clinic letters and correspondence to the GP, but it just gives a heads up and a request electronically. And both forms look completely different. So one is a please supply this. The other one is this is a prescription, so they do look very different. So we'll just choose the prescription one for now. We've got a treatment to continue box. So again, this is non-mandatory in this scenario, but some drugs will have this mandatory, and you can ask the GP to review this at a later date or continue or complete the course. So we'll press that, press OK, and you can go ahead and prescribe more medicines, or we can finish now. If we finish now, the system will load the prescribing template via printing, local printing. So I don't have a printer attached to this device, but if you have a printer that's attached, it should automatically print. But what we're able to do here is, once this loads, you'd be able to just press OK after you've selected the appropriate printer. For this scenario, I'm going to print a PDF, press OK. that. And what that allows me to do is see it now in a PDF format. And this is very useful if you're working remotely. You can then print a PDF and you can then email this through to your secretary or somebody that you wish to print this for the patient. Okay, let's cancel that. But if you chose a physical printer, it would have printed to a physical device. And that in a nutshell is how you would prescribe for a patient to have medicines collected from either the trust pharmacies or the GP. There is another option which isn't available in ICM, so if you're working in a clinic where you need to give a medication at that point in time, you can do something called a for administration medication. So this is where you might want to give the patient a tablet to help relax them, or depending on your clinical area. So for example, I'm just going to go in here and say that the patient can have a stat dose of diazepam. So I'm going to just choose this other option, and I'm going to say I want an oral tablet of 2 milligrams as a once only. So you can see it's pre-selected the time here, but you can choose a future time if you want to give it to them. And it says here, do you wish to record the medication? So this is useful if, as a prescriber, I'm also ensuring that the patient's given this. I can tick this box, which will lighten up the record administration at the top of the screen, which then allows me to record it and say that I was the one that gave it. If you're wishing somebody else to give it a further time, in a few minutes time, a nurse to log in, for example, and record that, leave that unchecked. But for this scenario, I'm going to say yes, I'm also going to give that to the patient. And when we finish, that's prescribed the for administration medicine, which is now green, meaning it's completed. So the patient, as far as the system's concerned, has had that, and the outpatient prescription is still there. If we go to the medication administration chart, we'll see that the diazepam has been given, and if we hover over it, it will say who it was given by and when. But if we hadn't ticked that box to say yes, you're going to give it, this is where the nurse or the next user will come along to then select this box and say yes, I've given that. And then if we want to move to the next patient, you can press this cross, and it will return back to the clinic list that you were working from originally.